Hello everybody, this is John Riley coming to you from sunny South Florida. I just fixed my buddy's 395 Husky. I put a brand new crank in it. Bearings and seals. Here's the crank that came out of it. It's funny, when I checked this rod, it wasn't moving funny or anything. And you know, I didn't even think that the crank would be bad. The saw is 5 years old, but doesn't have any hours on it. And I fired that bitch up for like 2 seconds and it shut off. Look at all the crap coming out of here. Look at it. Look at the bearings. They're all fucking destroyed and flat and shit. In any event, I changed the seals, the bearings, the rod bearing. Unfortunately, I had to use a Chinese big bore cylinder. I did transfer work to it to make sure that everything was flowing in the right direction, which it absolutely wasn't. Cleaned up the exhaust port, cleaned up the intake port. It's still a Chinese, glorified Chinese cylinder, so that is what it is. But everything else is OEM on it. It sounds pretty good. I'll fire it up in a second. But again, I used the still kit. It's really not made for the Husky, but the one rod will go on wherever the hell it is. On the PTO side, a few, like 4 or 5 threads, and that's enough to pull the crank in. And the other side, the still, on the flywheel side, the still adapter fit perfect, spot on. So I pulled that in, yep, and then I obviously used the that tool there to break the 2 cases in half, which that is just unbelievably a good tool. I use that for everything. When I do like 088s and shit, I just spread these apart, or 3120s, just spread them apart and you can squeeze them together. That's all you got to do. So it went together beautiful. I always put sealer on this gasket that goes in between. I used that ultra elastic Permatex, this shit right here, this Flex, Ultra Flex. I put like a thin layer on it, well, decent layer. That way you know it's gonna seal up, because you got oil and shit in there. I don't want to have to split the case again. I modified this muffler a while ago. I stole that idea from Eric Copsey. Putting a screen in between there, it's a great idea. And I just can't believe the rod bearings. They must have ran straight gas in it or something at one point. But this crank was completely destroyed. Let me crank this up one time. See what we got. Freaking light. I gotta do it this way so it's not. The sun's kind of behind us. It sounds decent. I think the cylinder's gonna hinder it a little bit, but whatever. That's the way to break it in. Bounce it off the chip, the rev limiter. If it can't pass that test, don't even put it together and run it. But I'm running K2, 4 ounces per gallon, ester synthetic with 90 octane Rec 90, so it should have plenty of lube. Plus I lube the shit out of everything when I put it together. I use K2 in an assembly lube bottle, and I hit the bearings, all the bearings with it. The rod bearing's good and oiled. The main bearing's got oil on it, that. And obviously the wrist pin bearing and the wrist pin and the rings and shit are all oiled with this oil. So it smokes for a little bit, but man, you got to know that all that shit's oiled before you crank this bitch up. You don't want to crank it up dry, that's for damn sure. And I'll put the clutch and all that garbage back on it, and she should be running good. This was a full wrap handlebar. I had to cut it for them because they needed to make cuts low to the ground. I should have waited and see if somebody wanted to trade me for it, but it came way out to here. It was stupid. It didn't work for him because, like I said, they have to cut right to the ground with it. His guys are brutal, so I'll probably fatten it up or make sure it's good and fat before I give it to him. There's my neighbor Claude. Hey Claude, how you doing? And that's that. So thank you for watching.